All right, everybody, here we go with preschool stuttering assessment. We want to start out with having parents taking a video from home. And why this is so important is that one thing we know about preschoolers and stuttering is that it's very variable. So it's really important that, and this is so much easier now than it used to be, to get parents to take a video of what the child's speech looks like at home in just a normal everyday interaction is so helpful. And so get that. We want to also try to see a parent-child interaction. Helpful because, number one, we get to see a naturalistic view of that interaction right in front of us, but also it allows us to really not only see the child, but it allows us to see what the parent's doing. I have had evals before where the parent has told me that when the child stutters, the parent just stops and waits and listens, and which is everything that we want them to do. And then I've gotten to see them do the parent-child interaction, and the child stutters, and the parent freezes and holds their breath and has a panicked look on their face. And I never would have gotten to know that had I not seen that interaction. So if at all possible, just get a natural parent-child playing with blocks or Legos or doll houses, farm equipment, whatever you're doing, little farmhouses, things like that. And sometimes kids will hardly ever stutter. Sometimes we'll have the assessment and there'll be almost no stuttering. But we really want to see stuttering if we can, but if we don't, parents are almost always right. And so if the parent is able to describe short segment repetitions, prolongations, blocks the child's having, I will pretty much diagnose the child as being a child who stutters, even if they happen to be fluent during that 1 hour session when I'm seeing them for the eval. So again, things are very variable. Kids can stutter a lot one day, and then the next day they're totally fluent. We definitely want to do a parent interview and case history. We want to get pregnancy and birth information, anything going on during pregnancy and birth. One thing we know is that kids that do not have a family history of stuttering, who stutter, are much more likely to have had complications at birth. So instruments used, loss of oxygen at birth. So we want to get that information. Overall speech and language development, is this child a late talker? Do they have speech sound disorders at all? Any language disorders going on? How about motorically? Did the child walk at age 1? What's their running like? Are they able to catch a ball? How sort of well adapted is their little motor system? And then we also want to get a good family history of speech and language disorders. So somewhere between 70 and maybe 85% of stuttering is believed to be genetic. And so we definitely want to know if there's a family history of stuttering. We want to know if there's any other speech and language disorders, any attention deficit disorder. Kids who stutter tend to be have much higher incidences of ADHD, and also dyslexia has a connection with stuttering, and Tourette's syndrome as well. So anything else going on, speech, language, hearing, reading, learning, tic disorders, anything going on. Also medications. Any kind of a stimulant, either which can be prescribed for ADHD, it can be prescribed for asthma. Any kind of stimulant is going to usually increase stuttering and sometimes even lead to the onset of stuttering for young kids who stutter. So we want to be really aware, is the child taking any medication and knowing what medication that is? So we've got genetic link, 50 to 70% of people who stutter, and we're just finding out now that maybe that number is even higher, maybe even 70 to 85% of people who stutter have a genetic link. We've got 3 genes on chromosome 12 that are believed to account for a certain percentage of stuttering, and then we've just come out, Drana has just come out with some new findings on a different chromosome that is also believed to cause stuttering for another subset of people who stutter. So some pretty exciting research, but just basically that this is overall a genetic neurological disorder. So we want to try to get that information if possible. Now, I just kind of talked about for kids that don't have that family history, they've got more birth complications, more history of early head trauma, diseases. Some people are linking strep virus to stuttering, surgeries, trauma of some kind, leading to stuttering onset. So, and then also ADHD can be a big factor, as well as Tourette's and dyslexia. So finding out all that good information is really important. All right, parent interview. When was stuttering first noticed? Was there anything special happening, and what was the disfluency like? So, all right, we want to know what parents think, and this is so important. So what was going on when the stuttering was first noticed? It's not that uncommon for parents to say, his mother was pregnant and had just recently given birth to baby brother, baby sister, and that's when the stuttering started. Well, people usually have children, 2 or 3 years apart, so it's not surprising at all that that just happens to coincide with when stuttering is going to start. And so mom and dad will often put 1 and 2 together, but one thing I like to tell parents is that I'm pretty confident that a baby sister does not cause stuttering. That even though they may have happened about the same time, right, what didn't cause the other? So it's really important that we give a little education with this as well, but it can just give us an idea of what parents are thinking. Also, what was that disfluency like when it started? Was it just easy repetitions, or did we have a lot of blocks, prolongation, struggle behaviors? And then has it changed? Has it gotten more severe, less severe? Did it start with repetitions and now has turned into prolongations and blocks? Did it start with prolongations and repetitions and now it's kind of eased off into just repetitions? So any changes going on? Do the parents think the child is aware of stuttering? Now, typically we don't ask this to find out if the child is aware of stuttering. If the child has normal cognitive abilities, he's going to be, or she is going to be aware that there's something different about their speech and that they are, just having a harder time talking. Now, being aware of stuttering is different from, struggling with stuttering and being upset by stuttering. So, asking, I want to see if parents know that the child's aware of stuttering, because 95% of the time he is, but also, do the parents notice any struggle, any avoidance of words, avoidance of situations, any word changing mid-stutter, anything like that? And again, then also just asking about the cause. So what was going on when it first happened and what caused it. I've had some interesting stories about, what parents believed to be the cause. When I was down in Alabama, I had a family come in and I asked them what caused stuttering, and they said his uncle tickled him really, really hard, and that's when the stuttering started. And so I made a little note in my chart that we're going to do some parent education. And then 2 weeks later, I had a completely different family come in, and I asked them what caused stuttering, and they said his grandfather tickled him really, really hard, and that led to stuttering. And I was thinking, wow, something in Alabama, parents believe that tickling causes stuttering. So again, it's just really important to know, what are parents thinking? What do they know about stuttering? And then on the other hand, you have parents that have been all over the internet, either have really, ideas that are really similar to what our ideas are about the cause of stuttering, or sometimes they have ideas that are really different from what we believe. So It's just really important to figure that out and where parents are, what they're thinking. We want to know what parents have done about the stuttering. Have they, what do they do when the child stutters? Do they try to get them to stop and start over? Do they just listen? What's been going on? Have they sought therapy already for stuttering? Have they noticed any situational increases or decreases? So have they noticed that, when mom comes home from work and the child gets all excited that there's more stuttering, or that when it's bath time or reading time that there's a lot more fluency going on? So any kind of situational increase or decrease. And then one of my favorite questions to ask is about personality and temperament. And so my next to last question is, what 4 words best describe your child? And sometimes you don't get a lot from that, but one of my favorite preschoolers I ever worked with, I asked mom that question, said, what 4 words best describe your child? And she looked at me and she said, she's really smart, she's really funny, she's really curious. And then she stopped and she said, you're going to think I'm awful, but she's really intense. And I was so glad mom said that. This was a 4-year-old that was writing and then reciting her own poetry in front of her family. And she was 4. And she had just a lot of intensity going on. And her stuttering was very intense. She would like that. It was like a machine gun intensity of stuttering. So I was really glad that mom was, right there with feeling like, there's an intensity going on here, and that intensity is sort of wrapped up in her stuttering. And then I always end asking, do the parents have any questions about stuttering, any comments about stuttering? Anything at all is really important. All right, and then we're going to want to do an interaction with that child, get a good speech sample with us. Now, maybe we've been able to get mom there and get a good speech sample with mom, and we've gotten to see a tremendous amount of stuttering, or we've gotten to see just what we need to see. Sometimes we don't, and sometimes the parents can't come in. If we're in a working in a school or something like that, and we've got a kindergartner and mom and dad just can't come in, it might just be us. So we're going to sit down and play and try to get a really good speech sample, and try to get some stuttering if we can. We want to start out by following the child's lead, no questions, just kind of hanging out and talking. If the child's really fluent, which again is not unusual, we want to try to increase our rate of speech. We want to ask lots of questions. We want to interrupt that child to try to get some more stuttering. And then also, if the parents happen to be watching, we can say, did you see what happened there? I really started talking quickly. I was interrupting. I was asking questions. And that, that led to an increase in stuttering. So you can have a little conversation about parents that, my interaction style didn't, and certainly their interaction style didn't cause the stuttering, but because the child stutters, interaction style can be really important in supporting the child or making it more difficult for them to talk. We also want to get an idea here, again, about that awareness, and not only about, maybe awareness is the wrong word, right? Because they're going to be aware of their stuttering, but are they bothered by it and are they struggling? So if stuttering is really tense, if there's a pitch rise, that they're struggling so hard that their vocal folds are lengthening out and getting a rise in pitch, a schwa vowel. So on the word baseball, you very well might get baseball, right? Everything is so tense that instead of that nice bay sound, I'm getting and just the schwa, because everything's tense and struggled and tongue's not moving very much. So that's a sign, again, the child might be fighting with the stuttering. Also, any kind of loss of eye contact right before, right during, or right after the stuttering can be a good indicator as well. Is the child able to talk about stuttering? So why have you come to see us today? And you get all kinds of answers from that. Sometimes it's I don't know, and they really don't know. Sometimes I've asked that and a little child has started crying. I've asked that before, and like a 4-year-old's told me, you're going to help me with my talking. You can get all kinds of answers from that. So why have you come to see us? And sometimes the kids really don't know, and sometimes the parents haven't even told them who I am or where they were going. They just got in the car and all of a sudden they're at this place and don't even know what's going on. So let's just have a little conversation, and we can say, and even if you don't have any other kids who stutter on your caseload, you can lie and say, I have kids who I see, and sometimes they talk like that, and sometimes they talk like that, and so sometimes they talk like that. Does that ever happen to you? Right. And sometimes kids are like, yeah, I do some of that. Sometimes kids are like, and actually usually they're saying no, they've never even, heard of that before, and sometimes they're not telling the truth, but sometimes they really don't, they might be aware of their stuttering in the moment, but they haven't really thought about it and don't really consider themselves as stuttering because they're still 3 and 4 years old. So, but at least it puts out there that, they're not the only child in the world who stutters, and that you may have some understanding of what stuttering is like. So even if you don't get a great response, at least the child gets to know, hey, there are other kids like me out there who, words don't come really easily for. We're going to do a formal assessment, the Stuttering Severity Instrument 4, and this is something that we'll practice when I come into class the next time. We look at percent syllable stuttered. We'll look at duration of stuttering, so the length of the 3 longest moments of stuttering, and then also physical concomitant behaviors, so any kind of secondary behaviors, eye blinks, jaw tension, loss of eye contact, things like that. I like to do the Goldman-Fristow test of articulation. I like to do the one word, just the regular test. And then I also like to do the story retell for that. Can be really helpful in getting a language sample and looking at difference between what's their stuttering like at the one-word level, what's their stuttering like when they're telling a story. If we need to, oral motor screening, language screening, and then always doing a hearing screening if they haven't had one recently. Overall patterns of disfluencies we're really more concerned about, I've got that more than 10 stuttering like disfluencies, SLDs per 100 words. But really, even if they have one big block and nothing else, they're still a child who stutters, right? So that 10 SLDs isn't really, there's nothing like, oh, they only had 9 stutters for 100 words, so they're not stuttering. Well, no, they are stuttering. So I'm really more concerned about, sort of the qualitative aspect than just the number of stutters. Also, if they're having more than 2 repetitions at a time. So something like that every once in a while might not be that unusual at all, but something like that, right? Even if it only happens once, that's a little bit unusual to have that many repetitions within one moment of stuttering. Rapid irregular repetitions, facial tension, increased pitch rise that we talked about. Any kind of blocking, right? Difficulty starting, sustaining airflow and phonation is going to be an issue. Any kind of secondary behavior, any kind of avoidances, and this can be really hard to see with little ones. Obviously they can't really tell you about this, but we want to have an understanding of, are they avoiding, are they changing words? If we see anything like that, that's a big deal. All right, this is a really good data, I think. So this is the stuttering-like disfluencies. The average child who stutters, preschooler, had 10.3 stuttering-like disfluencies per 100 words. So they had 5 part-word reps, 3 single-syllable reps, about 2 blocks. Compare that to children who don't stutter. They have less than 1 part-word reps and single-syllable word reps, and then less than 1/10 of 1 block or prolongation. So any blocks or prolongations are going to be certainly a signal to us that we have stuttering going on. And then we've got sort of the other disfluencies, or just the typical disfluencies, right? Interjections, revisions, multi-syllable phrase reps. Those are about equal for kids who stutter and kids who don't. So it's really those stuttering-like disfluencies that we're most interested in. When to recommend therapy: if the child's at risk for persistent stuttering, right? So if we have a boy who has a speech sound disorder, right, that's a big issue. If we have somebody who has a parent who's continued to stutter into adulthood, right, things like that, big risk for stuttering, we're going to start right away. Although one thing we'll talk about is, at first, what I'll do with kids who stutter who are going to start therapy and kids who stutter who I'm in a wait and see approach, we're actually going to kind of start at the same place. So I guess in a way this doesn't matter too much. If the parents are concerned and are seeking support, or if the child's reacting negatively to stuttering. So if we get any of those, right, we're going to definitely start therapy. So let's go ahead and stop there and just do assessment for now, and we'll get back to therapy soon.